All right, gang,
All
no
right, we'll
problem.
settle.
I'm glad that you're on. So it gave everybody a chance to get on. So what I was talking about is all of you, I'm assuming, are putting together your business plan for 2021. And I am absolutely certain that as part of your business plan, you put in there prospecting and which particular sources you're going to focus on, whether it's SOI, your FSBO, your expired, your just listed, just sold, and so forth. So assuming that that's the case, I'm absolutely confident that that is part of your plan to talk to people, to prospect. I want to talk about 3 specific things that you can do to set yourself up for success in that prospecting process, but also then want to talk about the sales skills that are necessary to be skilled at prospecting and getting great results. So the first thing is this. If you're taking notes, which I hope you are, I want you to write this down. Be present. Be present. In other words, be where you are. You know what? Most people are at work when they're home. In other words, they're thinking about work when they're home with the family. And then when they're at home with the family, their mind is at work. And they're busy traveling back and forth in their mind constantly. And no wonder people are always so tired, because of that constant mental traveling. Look, it is absolutely critical, especially with prospecting, that you are present, that you're eliminating the interruptions or the distractions. So one of the things that we can do in prospecting and being present is to make certain that you're, like, quote unquote, putting away the phone. It's tough to do that in today's world because most of us prospect using the cell phone. So you can't put away your cell phone in most cases because a lot of you don't have landlines, right? You're not going to be prospecting from the landline. But the thing that I'm saying here is you've got to commit to putting away the phone, so to speak, as it relates to text, to emails, to incoming calls, and social media. See, the challenge is that when we're prospecting, we have this tendency to want to check texts and emails and even say, well, I'm making these calls. And so some people might be responding to me through text or through incoming calls. And so I've got to check, I've got to answer. And I'm here to tell you, no, don't do that. Now is not the time when you're prospecting and trying to generate leads to answering the phone. It just simply opens up the camel's nose in the tent. You know the whole saying that if you let a camel put its nose in the tent, the next thing you know that its rear end is going to be in there as well. Just look, when you're on the phone prospecting, commit to yourself that you're not going to respond to text, you're not going to check for text, you're not going to check for emails and respond to them. You're not even going to answer incoming calls or get on social media to check and see what's going on there. Be present. Whatever time you set aside to prospect, set aside that time to only make telephone calls. If you get texts or incoming calls during that time, you just simply return those after you're done prospecting. Those calls or those return texts should be done during follow-up if they're in fact related to prospecting, because I firmly believe that prospecting is lead generation and lead follow-up is the incubation or the maturation or the conversion of leads to a client, to an opportunity to get a contract signed, whether it's a listing agreement or a buyer-broker agreement. So number one, if you want to set yourself up for success in 2021 in prospecting, is to be present in the moment. The second thing is this: be energetic. Have energy. See, most people, I watch it, especially as we role play, I'll watch how people have very low levels of energy. And then I'll ask them to increase the level of energy, and they think they are off the charts, cartoonish like a clown when they are energetic. And the fact is they are not. Most people have a very low threshold or a gauge on their level of energy. They think that they're being highly energetic, that they're being very animated, and in fact, they're not. So one of the things that I want to encourage you to do is to really practice behaving at a higher level of energy and being okay with that, especially over the phone, because so much of your energy and enthusiasm is filtered out because people don't get to see you. They don't see your body language. They don't see your smile. The only thing that they can rely on is your voice. So the tempo of your voice, the tonality, the decibel level, the intonation, those things are the only thing that they can gauge your energy by. So you've got to be very careful about making certain that you're doing the right thing relative to that when you're over the phone and prospecting. One of the best ways, though, to affect your tonality is to smile, is to continue to smile and to stand when you're prospecting. Look, nature abhors a vacuum, guys and gals. Meaning, let me give you an example. If we were to take a plastic milk jug, and we emptied all of the milk out of it, and then we smashed the jug, and then we put the lid back on, and we put the milk jug on the counter. If it sat there all day, the milk jug wouldn't move at all. It would maintain that current smashed state, all crumpled up. But if we took the cap off of the jug and let it sit there, over time, it would expand to almost some form of its normal condition, right? What is that all about? Well, it's basic physics. It's nature doing what nature does. It abhors a vacuum. It can't stand empty space. It wants to fill empty space with energy. So what it does is it takes the oxygen, the air that was expelled from it when you smashed it, and it's trying to put it back in there. Well, people, you and I are no different. We're nothing more than energy. And we are repelled by a lack of energy. The people you call are repelled by a lack of energy. They're turned on, they're excited by. Their atoms get moving, right? Get heated up by your energy. So it's important that you, when you make your calls, that you're energetic. I know that a lot of people that you call are not energetic, and you say, well, I'm not energetic because they're not energetic. Well, the fact of the matter is that works for some time, but eventually you got to get people out of their low state of energy and get them excited about conversing with you. It's one of the basic tenets of charisma. The reason that charismatic people get the results that they get is because they have a tendency to very positively affect the low level of energy that other people exhibit. Charismatic people have a high level of energy, and that high level of energy is contagious, and the people around them tend to increase their energy. And when energy increases amongst people, people tend to have a more memorable time. They tend to have a more productive time, a more fun time. So it's really critical that as prospectors, as real estate sales professionals, that we understand that our job is to help people increase their energy. That's really what leaders do. They increase the energy of other people. Well, you can't give people what you don't possess. If you're not energetic, other people are not going to be energetic for you. You have got to be energy. Your energy has a very direct impact on the energy that other people exhibit. So remember, smile and stand. Use your body as you are prospecting. You know, if you have to pace back and forth, have a mirror in front of you to pay attention, you know, to the fact that you're smiling and maintaining a positive attitude. The third thing is this: be scripted. You know, as you're prospecting, don't be afraid to be scripted. It is so interesting to me. I find it fascinating. It blows my mind the number of agents who say they don't like to use scripts. They hate being scripted. And yet, the fact of the matter is, every one of us is scripted. Even those agents who say that they don't like to be scripted, they're scripted. They're just using scripts, their own scripts that they've become comfortable with over time. You know, their own words. So here's the thing. I mean, I want you to think about the great actors and actresses in Hollywood. Pick your favorite one, whoever it might be. Just think about that particular actor. One of mine is Kurt Russell. I think about Kurt Russell. You know, he can play, for example, Wyatt Earp in Tombstone. Now, look, Kurt Russell is not Wyatt Earp, right? And I've watched him play other roles, and he plays roles that are exactly the opposite of the character Wyatt Earp. But the thing that Kurt Russell is exceptional at is taking a script, which is basically a bunch of words that aren't his, that somebody else has written. He takes those words and he memorizes them and he practices them over and over again. When I say practice, meaning he practices the way in which he delivers them so that it becomes natural for him, so it becomes authentic, so that when he says it, it feels comfortable for him, so that when other people hear it, of course, it feels comfortable for them. So when people say to me that they're uncomfortable using a script, it just tells me that they are unwilling to or haven't taken enough time to take those words which aren't theirs and to practice them to the point that they've memorized them, that then they can practice the way in which they're delivered so that they do become their words. See, the reason Kurt Russell gets paid millions, tens of millions of dollars to play a role in a movie is because he's willing to take words that aren't his, practice them to a point that when he delivers them, not only do they come across as his words? Do they come across as very powerful? And you believe he's that character. So I want you to think about that actor, actress that you thought about that you really enjoy. Have they made you laugh? Have they made you cry? Have they made you angry? Have they made you anxious? Right? Have they lifted your spirits, made you feel better about yourself as they played the role of that particular character that you enjoyed having them play? And of course, the answer to those questions is yes, they've done all of those things to you, because they simply acknowledge that part of their job is to take a script and to memorize it, practice its delivery, and then deliver it in a very exceptional way. But your scripts are no different. Guys and gals, I get the resistance to it. I remember, gosh, this has been nearly 20 years ago, that I started working with a builder, and the sales manager of the builder, I watched this guy as he was so slick. That was the word that I used. He dressed to the nines. His hair, not a blade of hair was out of, a strand of hair was out of place. He wore a gold ring, a gold bracelet. His shoes were always shiny, spotless. He manicured his nails. This guy was perfect. And I watched him in his perfect style, and I thought to myself as he presented to people, I thought, this is disgusting. These people see right through this. I can't believe this guy is doing this. Why is he doing this? And then he would use one of these phrases when people would approach the model. He would open the door, swing the door open, and with a great deal of energy and enthusiasm, like he was, the man with the megaphone at the Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus, and he was, trying to hype people up. He would open the door and say, "Come on in, folks," just like that, with a high amount of energy and smile, and he would motion them in, and he would use that word, folks, and it grated on me because I knew that people thought he was so disingenuous. I just absolutely knew it. And I watched him time and time again do that, and then time and time again get people to sit down and to sign a contract, and he would collect a 10% deposit from them for $60, $70, $80, $90, $100,000 before we had ever turned a shovel of dirt. And he would sell more homes than anybody. And I thought to myself, how is a guy who's so repelling so successful? And what I realized is this, that he wasn't repelling. I had just bought off on the idea that he was repelling, because I heard him say and do things, and I watched him do things that I wasn't comfortable with. So if I wasn't comfortable with it, then I assumed that nobody else was. It was a big aha for me. So what I remember doing when I finally realized that he was outselling everybody, I thought, well, he must be doing something right. So I just started to mimic what he did. And what is interesting is that over the course of the next 2 years, not only did I start to sell more homes than he did, but I took his job. The company decided that because I was selling more homes and demonstrated more aptitude, because I had simply followed his lead and then improved upon it, they wanted me to be the sales manager now. As you might imagine, he was not happy. But my point is this: don't be afraid to be scripted. The best are. The best people in life are scripted. Listen, your pilot is scripted. Your doctor is scripted. Your attorney is scripted. Your dentist is scripted. They follow the same process and procedure. They use the same words with all of their clients in the process of interviewing them, of asking questions, of performing their surgeries on them. It's the same process. Don't be afraid to be scripted. If it feels disingenuous, make it genuine. Practice it. Practice the process. Now, having said that, let's get into the sales skills, because we don't have a ton of time, and I want to make sure that we're getting into these. When you're prospecting, number one, what you're going to find if you're using a script is that all of the scripts start out with a question. The best conversations are nothing more than a series of great questions. So if, for example, we're calling expired, I'm just going to use these sales skills within the context of making expired calls. If you're making expired calls, I would just simply call up and I would say, ring, ring, and they say hello, and I'm going to say, hello, is this Mr. Johnson? And he's going to say, yes, it is. And I'm going to say, Mr. Johnson, this is John Ciet with Century 21 Everest. And I notice that your home is no longer on the market, and it's now appearing on my computer system as an expired listing. And I'm just calling to see if you're going to be interviewing the right agent for the job of selling your home. And the next step is to simply wait for him to respond. So step number one is to ask the question. Step number two, in terms of sales skills, is to simply listen. Listen to what they have to say. Remember, the number one human need is acknowledgement or validation. So listen to what they have to say. One of the things that I see salespeople do so often, especially those who are scripted, is ask the question, whatever question they have to ask, and then they can't wait to get to the point where they get to ask their second question. And they will forget to listen to the answer of the first question that they asked. So remember, the reason we ask questions is not to get to the next question. The reason we ask questions is to get an answer to the question. See, whatever the test is, the answers are always going to be given by the prospect. They will always give you all the information that you need on how best to communicate with them, what to say next, and how to serve them. So it is absolutely critical when you ask questions to listen to what people say. They will give you the answers. Oftentimes, their answer will lead you to the next question. See, all of you are really good at conversation. This I know. You're great at conversation. You can have conversation with your spouses, with your children, with your neighbors, with your coworkers, even with strangers going about your day. You go to the grocery store, the bank, it doesn't matter. You have conversations. You know how to do it. The challenge is in real estate, we all of a sudden forget what we already know when it comes to having conversations. We think we have to get into presentation mode. We call it the listing presentation or the buyer broker presentation, or we treat prospecting like it's a presentation. It's not. None of those are a presentation. Really what they are is just a conversation. Conversations are nothing more than a series of questions and answers that are given to those questions. So again, that's step number 2 is to simply listen. Now, when you're prospecting, of course, over the phone, like most of you are going to be doing, and some of you doing it face-to-face at the door when we can, when we're not under COVID lockdown, the number one thing that we can do to let people know that we are listening over the phone is to repeat and affirm what they say. So that's why it's so critical to listen to what they say so we can repeat back to them some of the things that they have said and affirm that they have a right to think, do, or feel that way. So in that conversation with Mr. Johnson, who has an expired listing, I listened to him say that, they're thinking about waiting until next summer, that they're probably not going to put the home on the market. They're a little bit frustrated. I'm just simply going to repeat back what he said. So what I hear you saying is that you're thinking you're going to wait until next summer, that this experience that you've had with your last agent has been a little bit frustrating. You know what? If I were you, I would feel the same way too. Repeating what he said and saying, I would feel the same way too, using that statement of affirmation, lets him know that I'm okay with his perspective. This is so critical, guys and gals. Do not miss this point. I just called Mr. Johnson. He does not know me. I'm a stranger, and worse, I'm a salesperson. And if I, at that point, do anything other than validate his right to say or to feel or to do what he just said he was going to feel or do or say, I'm going to be making him wrong. And how do you think a stranger is going to feel about a stranger making him feel wrong? He's going to be pissed. How many of you have pissed off a buyer or seller as you've been on the phone? What do? Well, they either start to yell or they hang up on you. So what I'm not going to do with Mr. Johnson is to try to convince him that he should be meeting with me at that point, right? I'm just simply going to repeat what he said and then affirm it by saying, you know what? If I were you, I would feel the same way too, or I would do the same thing too, or I would say the same thing too. Doing that affirms that he has a right to feel that way, and now he knows that he's not dealing with somebody who's going to try to make him wrong, which means he's going to give me a little bit more time to spend with him on the phone, and that's all I need is a little more time to continue to build some rapport with him. Now, the third step is this. It's called mirroring and matching, and I should have been doing that from the very beginning of the call. So, when Mr. Johnson answers and he says, good morning, I'm going to respond by saying good morning. If he says hello, I'm going to say hello. In other words, I'm going to use his words to help him feel more comfortable with me. I'm also going to pay attention to his rate of speech, his tonality, his level of energy. I'm going to match all of those things. If I had an elderly lady answer the phone and she answered and said, hello, And I responded by saying, "Good morning, this is John Ciet calling." First of all, it would be an abrupt change to her energy. It would be a shock. She would probably be a little bit irritated, if not at least taken aback. So the first thing that I'm going to do is gauge her energy and match that in the beginning. And then I'm going to begin to work to increase my energy so that I increase hers so that she and I have a more energetic conversation. But in the beginning, I'm going to mirror and match her behavior. So I'm going to pay attention to her words. So if she says hello, I'm going to say hello. If she says good morning, I'm going to say good morning. I'm going to pay attention to her tonality, and I'm going to match that. I'm going to do whatever it takes to do what they say when you're in Rome, do as the Romans do. Because see, guys and gals, we like to associate with people who are like us. We like to be with people who are similar to us. It makes us feel safer. So one of the things that I would ask you to do is to pay attention to personality styles. That in the beginning, as people, answer the phone and then answer your first question, they begin to leave you clues as to which personality style that they are. Now, we're not going to get into the personality styles, but if you have not read Personal Selling by the Wilson Learning Group, I would strongly encourage you to do that because it's one of the most critical books that you could read as it relates to prospecting successfully. You see, if we don't understand personality styles and don't know how to relate to other people and to behave in ways that are similar to them to help them feel safe, we're going to have a very difficult time building rapport with people. So if you've not read that book, get it and read it. If you've read it before, I'd recommend you go back and read it again or brush up on the different cues of the different personality styles so you know which personality style you're dealing with so you can begin to behave in that way to help them put down their walls of resistance or their defensive walls that people normally do when they're interacting with people they don't know. So number one, ask the question. Number two, listen to what they have to say, repeat and affirm. And then number three, mirror and match them, especially over the phone, just with the words they use, their tonality, their rate of speech. And then number four, use transitional statements. So what is a transitional statement? A transitional statement is really, it's the replacement of the So many people use, my filler word is And I do whatever I can to avoid using because in a conversation, especially where we're supposed to be leading somebody through a conversation, can create a lot of anxiety for people, especially when they know we're salespeople and we're going to be asking them to either sign a contract or meet us for an appointment. There's a lot of tension and stress. And one of the worst things that we can do if we're trying to build people's confidence in us is to use the word because it demonstrates that we don't know where we're taking the conversation. We've lost our train of thought, that we're not professional. So the transitional statement really replaces that. The transitional statement also replaces that awkward silence when we don't know where we're going and we're trying to gather our thoughts. But I would prefer that you use silence as opposed to using But you can replace both of those with the transitional statement. So let me give you an example of that. If I say to Mr. Johnson that he said to me that they're not interested in listing the home right now, they're going to wait until summertime, then I repeat what he said. So you're not going to list your home right now, you're thinking about waiting until summertime. You know what? If I were you, I would feel the same way too. Now my next step is I've been mirroring and matching, using his words, his tonality. Now my next step is step number 4, which is the transitional statement. I'm just simply going to say, having said that. So let me repeat that again. So what I hear you saying is that you're going to wait until next summer, that based upon your experience, you're highly frustrated. You know what, if I were you, I'd feel the same way too. Having said that, that's the transitional statement. Having said that, and there's more than one transitional statement. I could say, now that I know that, or as important as that is, or with that being said, then I'm going to go on to step number 5. So again, let me just repeat this so you understand where we are. You're keeping track. Number 1, I asked a question. Number 2, I listened. And the way I let Mr. Johnson know that I listened after he was done talking is I repeated back some of his words and I affirmed his right to think, say, or do that by simply repeating it and then saying, if I were you, I would think that way, feel that way, or do that as well. And then I repeat or or I mirror and match what he has communicated to me through his words, his rate of speech, his tonality, so that we're on the same energy level, basically that we're resonating in terms of energy. And then I use that transitional statement. Having said that, or now that I know that, or as important as that is, or with that being said, let me ask you this question, which is step number 5. Step number 5 is a pattern interruption. And in the case of prospecting, the pattern interruption comes in the form of a question that is off topic. So what was the topic at this point? Well, the topic at this point was, when is he planning on interviewing, the right agent to actually get his home sold? That was the topic of conversation. He told me at this point he's not interested in that. They're going to wait until next summer. So rather than me continuing to press that, I'm going to change the direction of the conversation. I'm going to change the topic. It's called a pattern interruption. Questions can serve as a pattern interruption. We're going to change the direction or the pattern of the conversation. So I'm just simply going to say, well, as important as that is, if your home had sold, where were you planning on going to next? So at this point, I've changed the topic from, hey, let's meet for an appointment, interview me to find out if I'm the agent you should be listing with, to just simply getting him to focus on the very reason that initially he wanted to get his home sold. This is a great opportunity, guys and gals, to build rapport. The pattern interruption in the form of a question gives us an opportunity to build rapport, because we're going to ask questions that are less, anxiety causing. When you ask him if he's going to be interviewing other agents and you would like for him to meet with you, it increases his level of anxiety. He's not happy at this point because his home hasn't sold. He's been getting a lot of calls from other agents. That conversation makes him anxious, if not angry. So changing the pattern of the conversation to something that's off topic, such as, had his home sold, where was he planning on moving to next? The likelihood is he was moving for some good reason, right? And I say good, meaning for some positive reason. They wanted to upsize, they wanted to downsize and live a simpler life, a more carefree lifestyle, or there's a job transfer, or they built some equity and they want to get that equity out of the house to go do something else, whatever that is. Chances are there was something positive that was going to come from this. Or it could be that there's a divorce and it's absolutely necessary that the home gets sold, and getting the home sold is a positive step towards getting the divorce taken care of. Whatever the case may be, you're giving them an opportunity to talk about something that they're more willing to talk about than meeting with you, a stranger, where there isn't any rapport or value yet in meeting with you. So they're more likely to have this conversation. So I asked Mr. Johnson, so if you had sold your home, where were you planning on moving to next? And then he tells me San Diego. Oh, great, San Diego. What was taking you to San Diego? Well, our oldest daughter moved down there. She just had a daughter, and we want to be closer to our granddaughter. She's our first granddaughter. Good for you. That's great. Well, now, have you lived in San Diego before? No, never lived there before. Well, had your home sold, or rather than that, what do you think prevented your home from selling? Asking that question, right, isn't on the topic of them selling their home, the question of whether they're still interested in it, but rather it's just on the question of asking what it was they thought got in the way. They probably think that if it's a market like this or a normal market, that it's the agent. Give them an opportunity to talk about that, to vent, to express their frustration, right? Because we all want to do that. We all want to vent. We want to express our frustration. And if you're willing to ask and listen, right? Not necessarily being their therapist, but that's really what you are, listening to them and letting them express, that their anxiety will go down and they'll appreciate the fact that you listened. Then it gives you an opportunity to circle around, to go back then to asking the question of the possibility of them actually getting their home sold. So let me just take you through that process. This is what I would do. I would say, so, Mr. Johnson, had your home sold, where were you planning on moving to next? Well, we were planning on going to San Diego. San Diego, good for you. That's great. What was taking you to San Diego? Well, our oldest daughter had a baby, and we want to be closer to our granddaughter. Oh, good for you. That's great. Have you ever lived in San Diego? No. This will be our first time. Well, that's great. Well, what do you think prevented your home from selling? Well, I don't know. I mean, all I know is that we had it listed. We saw other homes in the market sell. Our neighbors down the street sold. Ours didn't. I think that we probably could have done a better job at picking our agent. Well, that's interesting that you say that. While your home was on the market for 6 months, my company actually sold nearly 5,000 homes. And I guess my question for you is, how many homes do you need to sell? Well, just mine, John, just one. Well, that's the very reason we should get together. What would work best for you, an afternoon or an evening? Now, what I did there is I used the pattern interruption of asking a question off topic, and I did it several times, asking several questions off topic, but then circled back around to the idea of us meeting for an appointment. But in the process of doing that, I used another sales technique or sales skill, which is the soundbite. The soundbite is just simply a 10 to 30 second commercial that gives some reason or reasons to justify them choosing to work with you or choosing to meet with you or choosing to purchase whatever service you're selling them. It's what GM does or Ford does when they advertise their vehicles on the radio or online or on TV. There's a 10 to 30 second commercial that talks about the virtues of their product and why you should consider buying theirs versus the competition. So me saying, look, we sold 5,000 homes while yours was on the market and you only need to sell one, that's the very reason we should get together, right? So that closing that I use there is called that's the very reason closing. It really doesn't matter what Mr. Johnson said to the questions that I asked. Eventually, I'm just simply going to say to Mr. Johnson, and that is the very reason we need to get together. That is the very reason we need to get together. Fill in the blank, whatever it is that he said, right? So number one, ask a question. Number two, listen to what they have to say and let them know that you listen by repeating and affirming. And in the conversation, make certain that you're mirroring and matching so that you start to resonate with them, that you're on the same energy wavelength. Use the transitional statement when transitioning from the topic of meeting for an appointment to just simply asking more questions to build more rapport. So after you've repeated and affirmed what they said, you can just simply use one of those transitional statements. Having said that, now that I know that, as important as that is, with that being said, then ask your next series of questions. Most of those questions, although they should be in any script that you're using, most of those questions can be derived simply by having a conversation with somebody. Notice my conversation with Mr. Johnson when I asked, oh, what's taking you to San Diego? Well, my daughter, right? My daughter, well, have you been there before? No. The reason we're going down there is because, we want to get closer to family. Good for you. Well, what do you think prevented your home from selling in the first place? These are all very normal, natural questions. And then using the soundbite in the process of trying to, as a lead up to the closing question of that's the reason we need to get together, what worked best for you, is to use that soundbite as a justification for or a reason for them to consider meeting with you at this point. And then the final thing that I want to share with you here in terms of the sales skills is the level shift. The level shift can be used at any point within the conversation. Could be in the very beginning of the conversation, could be at the end of the conversation, could be somewhere in the middle. What is a level shift? A level shift is really reading between the lines of what they say and kind of reinterpreting it or restating it for them. So if Mr. Johnson said, you know what, we're not going to relist the home at this point. We might do something next summer. At that point, then I'm going to say, I'm going to repeat what he says, right? So you're not going to do anything right now. You're going to maybe wait until next summer. If I were you, I'd feel the same way too. And really, this is the level shift coming up here. And really, what I hear you saying, Mr. Johnson, is that you're just frustrated with the fact that your home didn't get sold. So you didn't really decide not to sell your home. The fact is your home didn't sell, And so now you're frustrated and you don't want to sell your home. See, those are two different things. Him saying he doesn't want to sell his home, that he's given up and he doesn't have faith that it can actually sell, is something altogether different than him saying that he doesn't want to sell his home anymore. He's just simply lost faith. It's like somebody asking you what your commission is. Well, how much is your commission? That question is more about them really wanting to know, okay, if I start to do my calculations on what I assume I'm going to get for the sale of my home and what you charge as a commission, how much money I'm actually going to net on the sale of my home. So if he were to ask me, well, what's your commission? I'm going to say, Mr. Johnson, that's a great question. What I really hear you saying is that you just want to make certain you net as much money as possible on the sale of your home, correct? Yes, that's correct. Great. Well, let's make sure that we have a conversation about how I'm actually going to net you more money on the sale of your home by getting you more money for your home in the beginning. And then we can talk about what my commission is. So guys and gals, look, these things, if you will outline them, what I would suggest that you do is that you have a list of these things already written out, pre-printed, typed up of the various sales skills and this pattern that you follow on these calls, so that it's more likely that you follow the pattern and you use these skills in the process of making your prospecting calls. And if you will, what you're going to find is that in every conversation, there is a pattern. It's basically the same pattern. And if you'll find the pattern and then start to use these sales skills in the process, what you're going to find is you're going to get further and further down the pathway in each one of these calls until you get to a point where that, to a very large degree, that every 5, 6, 7 calls that you're actually setting an appointment with people when you're talking with people who are actually motivated to buy or sell real estate. So hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, we've got just a minute or two here. We could certainly open it up to questions. So Stephanie, if you want to unmute everybody and let them ask any questions or make comments, and then we'll wrap it up.
Hi, John.
Hey.
Hi. Can you just repeat the last part of that when you were saying, I just understand that you just want to make sure that you net the most possible on the sale of your home, blah, blah, blah. What did you say after that?
Well, so that conversation is part of the level shift technique.
Right.
And a level shift is okay. So when I say that, I'm going to say, so what I really hear you saying is you just want to net as much money as possible on the sale of your home. And so let's make certain that when we meet, we have a conversation about what I'm going to do to actually help you net more money on the sale of your home in the very beginning. And then we can talk about what the commission will actually be.
Okay, thank you. Okay, got it.
You're welcome. Yep. Anybody else? Everybody's got it all figured out? You're doing it? All right, gang. Well, thanks for being on the call. Hopefully this was helpful. Do yourself a favor. Type these things up, put them in front of you when you're prospecting, because it's so much easier to remember to do these things and to follow that pattern, that approach, if you've got it in front of you kind of as a cheat sheet. So have a great week. And if I don't see you for the rest of the week, go out there and conquer it and slay it. And we'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.